On today's show, a look back on the Chychrun-Jensen deal. It appears to be a win-win for both teams. What would a new deal for Jakob Chychrun look like? And potential moves to help bolster the Caps.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we take a look back on the deal that sent Jakob Chychrun to the Capitals and Jensen out to the Ottawa Senators. At the time, it seemed like, wow, how did the Capitals get this done? How did Brian McClellan orchestrate such a deal? And ultimately, what were the Ottawa Senators thinking? But as we are farther removed from that deal, it appears to be a win-win. Chychrun has played well for the Caps, and Jensen has been huge for the Senators. I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll talk about what would a Jakob Chychrun deal look like. Listen, I think that everyone would like to see Jakob Chychrun in a Capital sweater for years to come. What would a new deal look like? Later, I'll talk about potential moves to help bolster the Capitals as they make a push for the playoffs. They are already sitting atop of the NHL, but there is still some moves that I think that need to be made. What moves would the Capitals entertain? And then in the final segment, I'll talk about Craig Laughlin, broadcaster for the Capitals, and his health condition and how much time he will be missing from the booth. But just to get it going here, just talking about that Chychrun-Jensen deal. And I remember when that deal first happened, I had to pause. I had to rewind the video and watch it again, that the Capitals were able to acquire Jakob Chychrun for Jensen and a draft pick. What were the Ottawa Senators thinking? I knew what was in it for the Capitals, of course. The Caps have been all in on Jakob Chychrun for quite some time, even before he went out to Ottawa. How did they get it done? And what is a new deal going to look like for Jakob Chychrun? Is I think that, like I said off the top there, we want to see him in Capitals colors for the long term. But let's do that. Let's take a look back on that deal and just a true masterclass by former GM Brian McClellan. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to dive deep into that remarkable impact Jakob Chychrun has had on the Caps since joining the team from the Sens in the offseason. And first of all, why was it necessitated? Is that the Capitals' blue line last season, and I'm going to go ahead and say the last couple seasons, has been pretty depleted. It was John Carlson carrying the bulk of the mail, playing 25 to 30 minutes a night, but then injuries happened. John Carlson, in fact, got injured, and this team was put to the test. And like I said, the Capitals have been all in on Jakob Chychrun for quite some time, that when the opportunity presented itself, well, they definitely took advantage of that. And what has he meant to the Capitals? If you do follow the team, or say you don't, impressive numbers is what I'm going to say. And we'll start off with the numbers. Chychrun just hit a milestone by scoring his 13th goal of the season against the Pens, which puts him at 3rd in the league for goals scored by defensemen this year. Now, if Jakob Chychrun was just a sound defender alone, that would almost be enough. If they could just have a shutdown defenseman, even though they have a guy like that a bit in Matt Roy, that would be enough. So the icing on top of the cake is that Jakob Chychrun also has an offensive flair, scoring 13 goals so far. It's becoming very difficult for this team. And a little bit later, I'll talk about it's not just Chychrun, it's also Logan Thompson, that these players that seem to be a part of the long-term plans for the Capitals. How do they all keep them here? And what is Chris Patrick going to do? But just taking a look at Chychrun, he's behind some heavy hitters like Zach Werenski and Cale Makar, each with 15. Talk about making a statement. And, there's already haters out there. I was reading some online posts here earlier. I think it was Sammy Silber that was posting it from the Hockey News, talking about that some Pens fans were saying that the Capitals got lucky because, well, a couple of the players were on LTIR and all this stuff. And a lot of haterade is what I guess I'm going to say about that. Some jealous Pittsburgh Penguin fans is what I'm going to say, that this team was able to orchestrate great deals. They were able to draft well. They were able to turn some of those draft picks into trades that helped bolster this team. Don't hate the Capitals because they made prudent decisions. And, well, the Pittsburgh Penguins are kind of flailing, kind of like a person that you stick a bag over their head and they're trying to see who's attacking them. That is where the Pittsburgh Penguins are at right now. So just kind of to contrast how teams can do things differently. So the big thing, of course, is his contract. And of course, like I said, and I think it bears repeating that we want to see Jakob Chychrun here for a long time. But as we look ahead, Chychrun's contract is set to expire at the end of the season. So this whole thing, well, it could come grinding to a halt in a hurry. But he seems pretty optimistic about his future here. He says, I love how he puts it. He says, quote, "We love it here. We can feel the passion," unquote. So, when you take a look at it, it seems like he's all in. But one of the things I know about Jakob Chychrun is he doesn't like to speak about his future or his past too much because, well, like he says, I have an agent. I'm actually not too involved in these kind of things, that my agent will reach out to me if there are some questions. But by and large, he lets his agent handle his business. But the big thing about Chychrun is he's focused on helping the team win and letting the contract discussions sort themselves out. With 31 points under his belt, he's leading the Caps defensemen and sits 7th overall on the team. So that's what I'm saying. And I've mentioned that on the show quite a bit, to just get it done when it comes to a guy like Chychrun, if you can. I'm sure his representation are like, hey, well, not so fast here. Let's see how this season plays out. And we're going to go ahead and get you as much money as you possibly can. That's an agent's job in the first place. But it's exciting to think about his potential, Jakob Chychrun, and what could be, especially as we look into the future, potentially. John Carlson's not getting any younger. So I think that to a certain extent that a guy like Jakob Chychrun could take on more of a leadership role, if you will. I expect John Carlson to be around for a while, but he is one of the veterans on the team, and you always kind of have to plan for the future. But future of defenseman Jakob Chychrun, well, this is when it gets, or where it gets a little dicey. Chychrun is currently in the last year of his contract, earning $4.6 million against the Cap. As we all know, this is a pivotal moment for him and the Capitals. What is what is this all about? Alex Ovechkin has this season and next season under contract, the Alex Ovechkin era, him chasing down Wayne Gretzky, Alex Ovechkin wanting to win one more cup while he's here. That I think this team is really pushing their chips all in on a team that is going to help him get that done. If the team is serious, the Capitals, about keeping him around long term, then it's safe to say we should brace ourselves for a significant salary bump. And people are always quick to point out that it hasn't been all rosy when it comes to Jakob Chychrun, that we have seen some defensive gaffes out on the ice. And I'm quick to point out that, of course, we do. He is a human at the end of the day. These are not robots, but all things considered, he plays very, very well. So contract projections. Let's look into a crystal ball, if you will, or AFP Analytics. They paint an interesting picture. They estimate that Chychrun's next contract could last for 8 years and might total $66.8 million. That is quite a contract. And do the Capitals have that amount of money in their piggy bank to get a deal like that done? That's a big deal and places him among the upper echelon of defensemen in the league. Listen, if you want the team that is going to play like you're getting this year, you're going to have to spend some money. The Capitals have the most points in the NHL. Unless Winnipeg wins tonight, that will be the case, that they have the most points in the entire NHL. Now, that's a big deal and places him in some elite company. But where it gets interesting is that it is, like I said, it's not just Jakob Chychrun. There are quite a few different players that the Capitals would like to have come back. The NHL is anticipating a rise in the salary cap to a minimum of $92.5 million for the upcoming season. So that does allow for a little bit of flexibility, some increased spending. And what are some of the things that we know is that, well, Ted Leonsis, he is willing to spend money. We've seen him do that historically. I am not an expert when it comes to the Wizards, so if he has some poor judgment there, you'll have to forgive me. But as far as the Capitals are concerned, I think that he makes really great decisions. But taking a look at the free agencies and the outlook, the Capitals are facing a significant number of players entering free agency, including Chychrun, Lindgren, Mangiapane, Eller, Dowd, Radish, and Jakob Vrana. So if I'm going to prioritize, and I'm going to do this on the fly here, bear with me here, I'm going to prioritize Jakob Chychrun, and I am going to prioritize Nick Dowd. And I hate to say it, that I would be willing to listen to offers on Lindgren, Mangiapane, Eller, Radish, and Vrana. Mangiapane's good, but I do expect that Ryan Leonard will be a part of the Capitals either later this season or next season. And the possibility that, I don't think it's his long-term plan to play on the third line, but I think to cut his teeth in the NHL that they might place him somewhere like the third line. So that's where I'm at, prioritizing it. I'm going to prioritize Chychrun and Nick Dowd. Nick Dowd, as we know, has been absolutely huge on the fourth line. I don't want to see the Capitals part with him, but that is what I'm going to prioritize. Additionally, Charlie Lindgren is expected to be a candidate for a 2-year extension, potentially worth $7.94 million, which would average about $3.97 million per year. So that's the tough part. And Thompson's next deal is estimated to be a 4-year agreement valued at approximately $22.56 million. So there is a lot of money in the air. There's a lot of things for Chris Patrick to sort out about ultimately who he's going to want to prioritize. But if we want to widen the lens, get a 30,000-foot view of the NHL, what are some premier players making that are comparable? Let's talk about Darnell Nurse signed a massive 8-year extension worth $74 million with the Oilers in 21, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson inked an 8-year deal for $66 million with the Coyotes in 2018. These figures give us a solid benchmark of what to expect. Because sometimes you don't know. And if you don't, follow salary cap things, and I mean, a lot of people don't, they just want to watch the hockey game. That's what, these deals could potentially fetch. So these figures, like I say, give us a solid benchmark. Chychrun's negotiations as he looks to solidify his spot on the team. He seems happy here. You got to imagine that the Capitals are happy here. It's about getting it done under budget. That can sometimes be the difficult part. But like I talked about off the top there, the Senators, what did he mean for the Sens? Let's chat about the Senators. In his recent match, as we know, the Capitals played Ottawa, and that had to be, quite a moment for him coming back home, playing in Ottawa in front of friends and family, that kind of thing. But it was definitely a meaningful game for him. His time in Ottawa was a bit rocky, but now he's thriving with the Caps. He even noted the fit issues he experienced back then, especially with the strong pairing of Jake Sanderson and Thomas Chabot in Ottawa. You can sense the relief and determination in his words. It's clear that he's found his rhythm with the Capitals. And it does appear that the Sens are pleased with Jensen as well. The Senators are holding their own, too, with the addition of defenseman Nick Jensen, who may not have had the offensive firepower of Chychrun, but has certainly stabilized their blue line. So a win-win. I kind of felt like the Capitals came out much ahead in that deal, and I still think they do. I think that Chychrun is quite a bit of a better player than Jensen is, but Jensen seems to be a perfect fit in Ottawa. So in any event, I'm happy. I'm happy for the Capitals. I'm happy for the Senators. As it turns out, there was more than meets the eye with Jensen and the Ottawa Senators. Let's just hope they can get a deal done with Chychrun in the long term. I am usually opposed to these long-term deals, but I make exception. The Tom Wilson one, I would sign off on that. Chychrun and Logan Thompson, those are all deals that I would pretty much give them what they want and try to allow enough to keep some of those other players I mentioned around. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about other moves that the Capitals are in a good position, but I don't think they're done here. A lot of questions on the third line. Still the third line. Eller, is he the right guy? Mangiapane, these different players that have cycled through on the third line. Not only that, but this team needs to bolster its roster for a deep playoff push. Who could some of those players be on the trading block? I'll discuss straight ahead. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If you win your first bet, that's $300 to keep the action going. And listen, the Commanders did it. They took down the Lions. So if you want vested interest in that kind of game or other games around the NFL, open up the FanDuel app. Put a little bit of money on those games. All of a sudden, they get that much more exciting. Imagine if you had some money on that Commanders game. You would be pretty happy right now. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day you can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So talking about potential moves to help bolster this team. I'm talking the third line in particular. I know that we have kind of fix some of the problems. I think that it's still a little bit early for Ethan Frank, he popped off the page right out of the gate, but is it sustainable? I've been to this movie before. I've seen players that have really just kind of really come on strong and fizzled in a hurry. So I'm trying to reserve some of my thoughts on Ethan Frank and his long-term viability until I see proof that he can, in fact, sustain it. He came out of the gate really strong, make no mistake about it, but this team has holes to fill. I still am not 100% sold that Lars Eller is the guy at that third-line center position. So what potential moves might lay in wait for the Capitals? And you take a look at it, the Capitals got dispatched in a hurry in the first round of last season's playoffs. They had to back their way into victory, and well, the New York Rangers took care of them in short order. The Capitals, despite the fact that they sit atop of the mountain known as the NHL, doesn't always translate to the playoffs. If you want to take a look at the Lions, if we want to talk about the NFL here for a moment, many people favored the Lions to win it all. Sometimes the best laid plans go to waste, so it's always good to plan for the future. And there's buzz around the team potentially looking to bolster their roster before the playoffs. Reports from Rachel Dare it suggests that the Capitals might be considering trading some of the young defensemen like Ryan Chesley, Leon Muggli, or Vincent Iorio to add some much-needed depth to the forward lines for the Capitals. And why defenders. Why would that be the case? Well, there is a glut of talent, and there's just not going to be enough roster spots for all these players. One player in particular comes to mind, and that is Vincent Iorio, one of the top prospects in the Capitals organization, but it's never been his time. He's been given multiple opportunities, but has never seized the moment. He's always got injured and just really hasn't excelled quite the way that we think that he should. And even if these players aren't, bad players, for example, and I'm not saying Vinny Iorio is, but Chesley, Muggli, these are all premier prospects in the Capitals organization. But if you want to get an upper echelon player, you're going to either have to give up a big roster player, you're going to have to give up a big draft pick or a prospect. And one of the things the Capitals have a glut of talent is blue liners. So what's interesting is that they might hold on to their first pick and both second-round picks in the 2025 draft, which means one of these promising defensemen could be on the move to snag a forward. So they do have some draft capital, and, like I talked about in the first segment, if teams like the Penguins could take a page from the Capitals, you don't always have to use those draft picks for actual draft picks. You can use them as draft capital to acquire other players. Wow, what a novel thought there. So trade candidates to watch. We can't also overlook Henrik Rubinski is another promising player who has popped up as a possible trade candidate. So that's another option. And I'm open to all of them, really. I would be opposed to trading Crystal. I would be opposed to trading Leonard, those kind of players. But, when you kind of go down the ladder a little bit, then I would be willing to listen to options. Plus, in all of this is Ryan Leonard, that we know. We've seen him blow up on the international stage and how great he played yet again, and also how he's been huge for Boston College. But there is also the possibility that he could join the team in the latter part of the season if Boston College gets eliminated earlier than he hoped, or at least the beginning of next season. So once his NCAA season wraps up, he's likely to sign his entry-level contract and jump into the lineup, which could be a huge boost. Again, I don't, project him to be a third-line player in the long term, but like I said, just to cut his teeth in the NHL, I think anything is possible. Let's do that. Let's drill down. I referenced it off the top of this segment is the third line. And just to exemplify what I'm talking about, how it's been a bit of a turnstile, Sonny Milano is still out due to injury. Hendrix Lapierre was sent back down to the AHL after a rough start. Jacob Vrana had a rough go of it, and Lars Eller, both of whom played pivotal roles in the 2018, are having a tough time finding the rhythm. And I think the hope there with Vrana and Eller was that familiarity was going to breed success. Kinda. I mean, I think that, we've seen glimpses of greatness from Vrana and, Lars Eller. You can tell he's experienced, but he is not bringing, I think, what the Capitals had hoped he would bring. But that's what I'm talking about, that I think that third line has been the theme all season long, is the weak point, and it's something that needs to get addressed, and it's something that needs to get done before the end of the season, or the Capitals will be thinking, woulda, shoulda, coulda. Let's set up tea time. But like I said, the silver lining in all of this is Ethan Frank. He has played very well, but how long is he going to play well? Still, the Caps have been finding it challenging to generate offense, even at even strength. 5-on-5 got a bit off the schneid in the last game, even though you could ask the head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they thought that they only lost by a goal. It's just they got lucky because the Caps went on the PP, and one of those goals was an empty netter. Oh, these guys are delusional. But the Capitals do need to work on 5-on-5 scoring. We saw a bit of a return to that in the game against the Penguins, a little bit in that game against the Ducks, but still a work in progress. Now, a name that's been spun out there quite a bit by the guys that do that for a living is Yanni Gourde. from the Seattle Kraken has been mentioned as a potential trade target. And with Leonard potentially joining the lineup, there's a real chance to strengthen the third line significantly. So, you can take a look at Leonard. He could be huge. I would like him here tomorrow if possible. That is not going to be the case, but all things that need to be taken care of. We have the trade deadline coming up here. It's going to be here sooner than we think. And those are the things that, potentially should get taken care of before then, because if you wait until the final moment, you will pay the king's ransom for some of these players. So definitely some tough questions for Chris Patrick, Brian McClellan, the Capitals, Ted Leonsis, Dick Patrick, all of them. How are they going to get it done, and how are they going to make this team a competitor? I guess it's pretty much squarely on Chris Patrick at this point, with phone a friend to Brian McClellan. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about the sad news. I think that he's going to end up being okay, but beloved Caps color commentary, Craig Laughlin on Monumental is going to be out for some time due to a health condition. What's the latest on that? I'll discuss next. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from Select Quote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. Select Quote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets Select Quote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage up to $5 million. No medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you'd think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Select Quote, they shop, you save. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. So some non-Capitals news. It is Capitals broadcaster news, is that Craig Laughlin, Locker, had some, hard news to break to the fans. Well, it's been some time here, but I've been busy talking about games that I wanted to get to this. I've referenced it in earlier podcasts, but that he is going to be missing some time due to a health issue, most notably his heart. And he is an optimistic guy, and not the news that we were looking for. When you think Joby, you think Locker, you think two of the best to do it in the industry. And if you question that, every once in a while, if you're watching the game on ESPN Plus, go ahead and listen to the other team's announcers, their play-by-play, their color commentary guys. Some are good, but I'm going to go ahead and venture and say that very few are as good or better than Joby and Locker. So his loss, temporarily is going to be noticeable. Good thing for the Capitals is they have Alan May on deck, and he is going to fill in at least part of the time. And that they're in a good position that way, that Alan May has a good hockey mind, and I think that they will be in good shoes going forward here. But some sad news, like I said, during a recent broadcast, Craig announced that he'll be stepping away from his role to focus on his health. Following some important medical advice, his doctors have recommended heart surgery, which is set for the end of the month. But one of the things we know about Locker is he has a positive outlook. He said that I'm focused on it. I want to beat it head on. I'm optimistic and confident that I'm going to return better than I was, unquote. And that's what we love. We love that fighting spirit in Craig Laughlin. Is that, a former Cap, a former NHLer, he brings a lot to the game. Some of my fondest memories are watching the games on TV with Joby and Locker, and just their banter back and forth, just their overall hockey knowledge is definitely what keeps me coming back game after game after game. And if I had an option to watch, or listen to two other commentators, I wouldn't do it. Just two of the guys that do it the best in the business, and the Capitals, their broadcasters, the fans will definitely miss him in his absence. While he takes some time away, Alan May from Monumental Sports will step in to join play-by-play announcer Joe Beninati. So, a tough moment for Locker, but, as you get older, health issues happen. And I'm glad that it was something that he is able to take care of. Sometimes these health issues, they happen and you're not able to take care of them. So if there is a silver lining, it's that he's going to be able to get this done. And from what it sounds like, knock on wood, he should come back as good, if not better, than he was before. As for the Capitals pregame live and postgame live shows, a rotating cast of analysts will keep things rolling while he's away. Al Koken as well will be another guy that I've heard will fill in with Joe B up there as well. So it's just going to rotate. There is some experienced broadcasters that can step in and fill that role. It's, probably not ideal, as things have been set in their way for quite some time, but that's where they're at right now. The Capitals organization and Monumental Sports have fully backed Craig, and his decision recognize his incredible contributions over the last 30 years. Wow, 30 years behind the booth, behind the mic. That is stunning. The fact that, he still has a job, him and Joe B, that speaks volumes of what kind of talent they have. They could replace these guys anytime they want. It's their prerogative, but they are loved, and that is why they're here. It's truly respected and beloved by the fans and colleagues. They praised his resilience and strength, and we can't wait to have him back behind the mic. Now, as far as his legacy is concerned, for those who might not know him, Laughlin has been with the Capitals since 1990, and his impressive history, even playing 6 seasons with the team before embarking on his broadcasting career, racking up 283 points. Now, looking ahead, Craig shared, quote, "I love and cherish what I do. I look forward to the great run the Caps are going on and have the rest of the season. I hope to be back by then. I'm going to battle my butt off to return as soon as I can," unquote. So ultimately, we're all hoping for a speedy recovery for Locker, as we know that he is huge for the Capitals night in and night out. It's one of those hard things about getting older as well. Health issues happen. I mean, they can happen when you're younger too, but again, to reiterate, I'm glad that he was able to take care of this before it turned into something much worse. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.